Hello, this is Aaron Maller from Parallax, and this is just an interesting little video to ask about some family behaviors that we're seeing to see if this is intended or what the suggested approach is for working around this. So some backstory. We're in Revit 2024 right now, and we're in our window library, which is a series of generic model families that represent windows. I've also got the window library open in 2021 just because I'm doing some testing back there as well. But here's what we're seeing. Inside our window library, because they were built in 2016 before elevation from level was schedulable, we have our own parameters for the head height and the sill height of the families. And so you'll see here the 2 feet and the 8 feet, which are formula driven, so that if you're adjusting one of them, obviously the other one changes, and so on. But watch the behavior now if we start to lower the head height to a condition where part of the family wants to drop below the level. If we head down to 7 feet, everything is okay. If we type in 6, we don't get a warning or an indication that anything is wrong, but you'll see that it actually only dropped down to 6'9", and then it just stopped. And anywhere that you go below that, of course, you will see the math still working properly here. Nothing is changing in the family or where the family is located. And again, it won't give us any indication that there is a problem here. Now, interestingly enough, if you were currently to lower the family by just moving it, it works fine. Now, of course, what we're seeing now is the head height is set to 8 feet. The elevation from level is currently at -6. I don't remember if that actually is. It's not even the correct value, but it's pulling some interesting value there for what that elevation should be. Needless to say, normally we try to keep that zeroed out so that we could schedule our own parameters. This becomes interesting if the windows need to drop down to below this point. Now, this point does vary based on how tall the type is, and I haven't done a ton of testing to see if it's this particular type or what types are present in the families. And again, if we turn off the trim, the problem is those trim pieces are still there. They're just not visible at the moment, but they're in the family editor, so it still won't drop down. But then if we go in and actually delete those pieces of trim so that their extents are not there anymore, now the behavior will be slightly different. So we'll load it back in. You'll see that it did drop down, but again, it didn't drop down to where we put it. It just dropped down because that trim is no longer there. So this got us thinking maybe we should revisit this, and then we should start looking at using the Autodesk elevation from level parameter, since starting in 2020, it can now be scheduled. Before we jump into that, I just want to point out one other thing, and that is I'm going to undo that deletion, and we're going to go look at this inside the family editor. I do want to point out that in the family editor, all of this functionality works fine. So if we say drop down to 7 feet, it's fine. If we say drop down to 6 feet, it's fine. If we say drop down to 5 feet, it's fine. Nothing breaks because even this negative value right here is not a parameter that's assigned to anything. It's just a schedule field that we've created. So you can drop this window or this generic model all the way down to be negative, and it's always worked fine in the family editor, and somehow we've just never noticed this behavior inside the project environment. Needless to say, with this little issue coming up, it made us think, okay, maybe it is finally time to revisit this, get rid of our own parameters, and start using elevation from level and default elevation. The bonus would then be that we could also get rid of the dynamo graph that we have, because we have one that needs to run, because in the event that people have started moving these windows, of course we have to reconcile the fact that there's now 2 parameters here. So we have a dynamo graph that grabs all these families, and it takes this value and it adds it to this value and zeroes this value out, which effectively does leave the window in exactly the same spot. It just zeroes it out like so, and now the schedule is correct. Okay, so now we've flipped to Revit 2021 because this is the base version that we build the library in, so we can talk about what it could mean if we were to use the elevation from level parameter. So here you'll see we have the family now reconfigured where the entire thing is at the level of the family so that elevation from level can work properly. But if we load this in and we start trying to use it, you'll see that this is the 9 inches that the elevation from level should be at, but it's actually still forcing it to drop down to the base of the family. So no matter what we do, elevation from level is always going to be at the lowest extent of the geometry that's in the family, which inherently doesn't work really for any sill height, head height conditions where there are exterior or interior pieces of trim in the components. So I'm kind of wondering if this is intended behavior or and it's been this way for a number of years regarding the out-of-the-box parameters, which is why we've tried not to use them. Another example is we have elevator doors where you've got the wall and then you've got the door that goes in it. And if you've ever looked inside an elevator shaft, those doors have big mechanical wheels that basically roll the doors back and forth. Well, if we have this in our family, then you have to actually set the elevator door at this height above the level, because it's forcing this to be the 0 of the family. So I don't know why that is, because inside the family editor, obviously, everything behaves okay if it's below the level. And then once you push it into a project, it forces everything to sit above ground. And it doesn't even do it in a way where it changes the parameter value. It just changes what the parameter value represents, and it kind of just doesn't tell you that. So wanted to know if we're missing something or if this is just kind of how it's intended to work.